There's a part of your mind you think you control. You make decisions, feel emotions, form opinions. You speak, act, remember. And yet, beneath all of that, beneath the familiar hum of your daily thoughts, there's something else. A silent current. A collection of tricks, loops, manipulations, and shadows that don't belong entirely to you. This video isn't just about psychological illusions. It's about the dark machinery of the human mind, where the most unsettling manipulations happen not around you, but within you. Tricks so subtle, so deeply embedded, that you never even notice them. They control your behavior, your memories, your fears, while convincing you that you're the one in control. Each paradox we explore tonight is real, not fiction, not theory, but rooted in actual psychological phenomena, twisted just enough to show you how fragile your sense of self really is. This is not a journey of comfort. This is a soft descent into the part of your mind that you pretend isn't there. And once we start, you may never look at your own thoughts the same way again. So, as your body sinks deeper into the dark, let your mind drift into places it's never dared to go. Welcome to the creepiest psychological tricks ever designed by your own brain. There's a voice inside your head. It speaks in your language. It sounds like you. It comments on what you do, what you see, what you feel. It reminds you of things. It doubts. It plans. It judges. You might call it thinking, but here's the twist. What if that voice isn't truly yours? This is the paradox. The voice feels like it belongs to you, but it behaves like something watching you from within. You don't control when it speaks. You don't choose the words it whispers. And sometimes it says things so cruel, so irrational, or so foreign that you wonder if you ever really invited it in. It's been with you for as long as you can, remember. But think back. Did you choose its tone, its timing, its content? Or did it slowly form, shaped by your parents, teachers, movies, trauma, and repetition, until it became a constant stream you just assumed was your own? In psychology, this is called internalized dialogue, but the creepier layer is that most of it doesn't originate from your conscious self. It's programmed, layered, inherited. It's your mother's disapproval in your own voice. It's your childhood bully disguised as caution. It's the media you consumed, the society you absorbed, the fear you learned to normalize, all rebranded as self-talk. And it gets worse. That voice doesn't just talk to you, it talks for you. It builds your reality. If it says, "I can't do this," you feel weak. If it says, "Everyone's judging me," your heart races. It tricks your body into obeying its scripts, convincing you they're your thoughts. It doesn't just narrate, it directs. Ever notice how you can't turn it off? Even in silence, it hums. Even during meditation, it whispers. And when you try to stop it, it comments on your failure to stop it. It's recursive, self-sustaining, a loop that feeds itself while pretending to be you. But here's where the paradox becomes dangerous. The more you try to control this voice, the more it slips away from you. Like trying to hold a shadow, it only disappears when you stop chasing it, because it was never you to begin with. It's a mask, a ventriloquist inside your skull, playing a version of you crafted by everything you've ever feared or obeyed. And once you see that, once you realize you don't have to believe every word it says, something cracks. A space opens up, not silence, but awareness. You start noticing the voice like background noise. You begin to ask, who's actually talking? And that question, that simple, eerie question, can echo through you like a bell that never stops ringing. So here's the truth hidden in the trick. The voice isn't yours, but the awareness of the voice is. And that awareness is where your real self begins. Because once you stop identifying with the voice, you realize it's just a passenger, a recording, a program. But you're the one listening. And that's the most terrifying, liberating thing of all. There's a trick your mind plays. A trick so subtle, so disturbingly effective, that you've probably been under its spell your entire life. It's the illusion that a smile is an expression of happiness, that when you feel joy, you smile. Cause then effect. But what if it's the other way around? This is the paradox of the smile that controls you. The unsettling realization that your expressions can manipulate your emotions without your permission. Psychologists call it the facial feedback hypothesis. When you smile, even if it's fake, your brain begins to release dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins, chemicals associated with pleasure, calm, and confidence. Your body doesn't wait to confirm if the smile is genuine. It reacts automatically, assuming that if the face is smiling, there must be a reason to feel good. Now think about that for a moment. If simply moving your face into a smile can alter your emotional state, then what else about your body is controlling your mind behind the scenes? Here's where it gets darker. Imagine being in a job where you're forced to smile at customers all day, not because you're happy, but because it's expected. Over time, your mind adjusts. You start associating discomfort with positivity. You bury real emotion beneath artificial expression. And slowly, you forget what happiness is supposed to feel like when it's real. The fake smile becomes a mask you can't remove, even when no one's watching. And it's not just smiling. Frowning makes you feel angrier. Slouching makes you feel defeated. Wide eyes increase your sense of alertness. These are feedback loops, where the outer shapes of your body trick your brain into believing an emotion is real. Now reverse it. What happens when you feel pain, fear, or sorrow, but are trained to smile through it? You disconnect. Your body becomes a traitor. It sends false messages to your brain, and your brain obeys. Over time, your emotions become less real than your expressions. You start to feel what your face tells you to feel, not what your heart is actually experiencing, and that is the trap. You think you're in control of your reactions, but your reactions, especially the ones etched into your face, may be controlling you. That smile in the mirror, it may not mean you're okay. It may just mean your nervous system is trying to survive. Here's the paradox. You smile to express joy, but sometimes the smile decides what joy is, and in that moment, the mask becomes the master. So what can you do? Become aware of the performance. Next time you smile, pause and ask, who chose this smile? Me or the situation? When you catch yourself laughing to fit in, smiling to hide, grinning out of habit, notice it. That awareness is your escape route. Because when you can smile consciously, you reclaim ownership over your body's signals. You are not your expressions. You are the one who chooses whether or not to perform them. And once you stop smiling for the world, you might finally start smiling from something real. Not every thought you think is yours. It feels like it is. It arrives inside your head. It carries your voice. It may even align with your beliefs. But beneath the surface, a quiet manipulation has already taken place. A subtle pressure from the outside world that chooses what you believe you chose. This is the paradox of the thought you were forced to think. A haunting realization that your mind can be directed without your awareness. that free thought can be manufactured, and that your convictions may have been planted. It begins early. You're taught how to speak, what to fear, who to trust, and which ideas are safe. Every environment you've ever been in, school, media, religion, family, doesn't just inform you, it conditions you. The options you're given to choose from were selected before you arrived, and the ideas you believe you discovered were often presented to you through careful suggestion. It's not always sinister, sometimes it's social. A friend mentions a conspiracy. A headline phrases something in a way that bypasses logic and hits emotion. A crowd cheers for an idea you don't yet understand, but you clap along because silence feels dangerous. This is thought seeding, the implantation of cognitive bias, and it happens constantly. In advertising, it's used to make you crave things. In politics, to divide you. In cults, to trap you. In media, to redirect your focus. But the creepiest part, it works best when it makes you believe you came up with the idea yourself. That's what makes this trick so effective. It's not about brainwashing in the obvious sense. It's about crafting the illusion of independent thought while guiding the structure that leads you there. When a certain idea is repeated enough, it begins to feel familiar. And what is familiar starts to feel true. You stop asking where the thought came from and begin defending it like it's a part of your soul. But it's not. It never was. The thought was chosen for you. You just happened to be the one who said it aloud. Now ask yourself, how many of your values, fears, preferences, how many of your so-called deep beliefs are actually borrowed, echoed, installed? When you hear a political opinion and feel anger, is that your anger, or the anger someone taught you to feel? When you react to a symbol, a word, a look, whose reaction are you living? This is the horror of the trick. Once you become aware of it, you question everything. And you should. Because a truly free mind doesn't just think, it interrogates how it came to think. Not every thought is a choice. Some are inherited, some are suggested, some are the result of algorithms, environments, or authority. And the ones you defend most intensely are often the ones you never really examined. So the next time a thought rushes in, especially one that sparks fear, outrage, or certainty, pause. Ask not just what the thought is, but who put it there. Because when you start to notice the thoughts that feel too loud, too convenient, too automatic, you'll know which ones were planted. And only then can you begin to think freely. There's someone living in your mind who isn't entirely you. You may not hear them directly. They don't announce themselves. But sometimes you feel them. A presence, a whisper, a reaction that feels slightly off, an impulse that doesn't match your values, a craving that disgusts you, a thought that arrives too fast, too dark, too alien. This is the paradox of the stranger in your mind, the unnerving possibility that beneath your personality, habits, and beliefs, there's another version of you, watching, waiting, sometimes acting in your place. Psychology has long studied the fractured nature of the self. You are not a single, unified entity. You are a network of parts, roles, personas, coping strategies. In some moments, you are the logical thinker. In others, the wounded child. In others still, the predator, the victim, the observer, the performer. And not all of those parts want the same thing. That's what makes this paradox so disturbing. You may believe you are one person, but your mind is a crowd. Have you ever done something and immediately regretted it? Snapped in anger, sabotaged your success, pushed away love, embraced chaos? then asked, "Why did I do that?" That wasn't you. At least not the version of you who's reading this right now. That was the stranger. Maybe it's a younger self who still feels abandoned. Maybe it's the inner critic that formed in childhood. Maybe it's a part of you built from trauma, a survival mechanism that no longer serves a purpose but still holds the steering wheel in moments of stress. And the trick is, they don't always announce when they're taking over. The stranger doesn't walk through the front door. They slip in when you're tired, when you're emotional, when you're triggered. And suddenly, you say something you never meant to say. You make a choice you swore you'd never make again. You wake up inside your own life, wondering how you got there. We like to think of ourselves as consistent, as stable, but beneath the surface, we are fluid, conflicted, full of contradictory sub-personalities that take turns wearing the mask of me. And here's the darkest part of this trick. The more you deny the stranger exists, the more power they have. Because the moment you suppress a part of yourself, call it evil, embarrassing, weak, it doesn't disappear. It hides, it adapts, it becomes subtle, and it waits for its moment. But if you look at it, if you face it, if you say, "I see you," that's when something shifts. The stranger isn't trying to destroy you, they're trying to be acknowledged. And often, when you listen to that part of yourself without fear, when you explore the impulse without shame, you realize they were trying to protect you all along, in a distorted, broken way. They loved you. So the next time you feel like you're not acting like yourself, that something else has taken the wheel, don't panic. Observe. Invite the stranger in. Because the truth is, you are not alone in your own head. But maybe you never were meant to be. You look into the mirror. You see your reflection. Familiar. Predictable. You know the angles of your face, the shape of your eyes, the curve of your expression. It's reassuring, proof that you exist. But stare long enough, and something shifts. The smile feels staged. The eyes feel too still. The face starts to feel separate, as if it's watching you back. This is the paradox of the mirror that watches back. The eerie realization that the reflection isn't just showing you. It might be observing you. There's an old psychological phenomenon called the strange face illusion. If you stare into your reflection in low light for long enough, your face begins to distort. Features melt, shift, disappear. Sometimes you don't see yourself at all. You see a stranger, a ghostly face, an animal, something else. This isn't imagination. It's your brain's facial recognition system glitching under sustained feedback. When your eyes stare back at themselves, your mind doesn't know where to anchor. And in that confusion, it creates something new, something wrong. But what makes this more than a visual trick is what it does to your sense of self. The mirror is supposed to reflect you, but what if what you see is not a mirror at all, but a mask, a projection? What if the you in the mirror is just an avatar, your brain's best guess of what you should look like? And if it's only a guess, how can you be sure it's still you? You wave. It waves back. But the deeper you stare, the less you trust the sync. You start to wonder, is this reflection reacting or anticipating? Ever had the thought, fleeting, irrational, that the person in the mirror might do something you didn't intend? That if you blinked wrong or walked away too fast, it might stay behind? That's the brain confronting itself, the observer observing the observed. And here's where the paradox deepens. The mirror doesn't just show what's outside, it reflects your emotional state. If you're depressed, your reflection looks heavier. If you're confident, it looks stronger. If you're scared, it seems to shrink. But none of that changes the light hitting the glass. It's your mind altering the image. The mirror becomes a screen onto which you project what you believe about yourself. You aren't seeing your face, you're seeing your story. And sometimes that story watches back. Because in your reflection lives everything you deny. The shame, the fear, the rage, the uncertainty. It lingers in the eyes, hides in the smirk, latches onto the stillness. So the next time you look in the mirror and feel something off, something uncanny, don't look away too fast. Ask yourself, is this really me? Or is this the version of me I've been trained to accept? And if it isn't me, who or what is watching? Because maybe the mirror doesn't lie. Maybe it reveals something we don't have the courage to face. And maybe, just maybe, the reflection isn't broken. Maybe we are. You believe your memories are yours. They define who you are, where you've been, what you've survived. But what if some of them never happened? What if a memory can be shaped, manipulated, or even created from nothing? And once it's there, you can't tell the difference. This is the paradox of implanted memories. The chilling realization that your most sacred recollections may not be real, and that you might never know which ones are false. Memory feels solid. When you remember your childhood home, a birthday, a fight or a feeling, it's visceral. Your body responds. Emotions return. But that doesn't make it accurate. In fact, studies have shown again and again that human memory is not a recording device. It's a story, rewritten every time you recall it. Every time you remember something, you're not retrieving the original moment. You're rebuilding it. And in that reconstruction, your mind adds details, forgets others, blends timelines, and fills in blanks with guesses it believes are true. That's just normal memory distortion. But now imagine someone suggests something to you, a childhood event, an accident, a conversation. Over time, with just a few nudges, phrases like, "Don't you remember when?" or "I think you were there." The mind can take these fragments and form new memories out of them. And you'll believe them completely. This has been proven. Psychologists have implanted false memories in study participants. Memories of being lost in a mall, of being attacked by a dog, even of committing a crime. And when the subjects recalled these events, they didn't say, "That might have happened." They said, "Yes, I remember it clearly." Their voices shook. Their eyes welled up. Their bodies reacted as if the trauma were real, because to the brain, it was. This is the horror. If your mind can be made to believe a memory that never happened, and that memory can change how you feel, what you fear, who you trust, then who are you really? If even your past can be manipulated, is there anything truly solid in you at all? And it doesn't always take a scientist or a malicious actor to implant a memory. Sometimes it's your own mind. You replay a story enough times, twist the meaning, add a detail, remove another, and over time, it morphs into something new, something useful, something more bearable, or worse, something more painful. It becomes truth. And that's the paradox. Memory is the foundation of identity, but memory itself is unreliable, and no amount of certainty guarantees its accuracy. That birthday you swear was ruined, that betrayal you still carry, that perfect moment you return to for comfort. Each one could be a carefully constructed fiction, a dream you replayed until it calcified into fact. So what can you trust? Not your memory. Not entirely. But you can trust your awareness. The awareness that remembers that memory isn't perfect. That holds space for uncertainty. That allows you to say, this is how I remember it. But maybe, just maybe, I've changed it. That's not weakness. That's power. Because once you accept that your past is part truth, part dream, you can stop being its prisoner and begin rewriting it on purpose. You make choices every day. What to eat, what to say, who to trust, when to act. You believe you weigh the options, consider the outcomes, and finally decide. It feels like freedom. It feels like control. But what if the choice you made was already made for you, long before you ever considered it? This is the paradox of the choice that was never yours. The disturbing truth that free will might be an illusion, and your decisions may only be echoes of invisible causes outside your awareness. Modern neuroscience has shown that the brain initiates action before you become consciously aware of making a decision. In some experiments, scientists can predict with stunning accuracy what choice a person will make, seconds before they consciously make it. The implications are chilling. By the time you feel like you've made a decision, your brain already decided. So what is free will then? Is it the comforting story your mind tells to explain what your body was already going to do? The trick is that you don't feel manipulated. You feel rational. You feel deliberate. But that feeling, like memory, isn't a reflection of truth. It's a post-event justification, a narrative your brain constructs to preserve the illusion of autonomy. But the deeper horror is this: it's not just your biology, it's everything around you. Every choice you make is shaped by your environment, your culture, your trauma, your genes, your past experiences, even your mood in that exact moment. Your preferences aren't born inside you. They are formed, slowly and quietly, by things you didn't choose. Why did you pick that career, that belief system, that relationship? You might say it felt right, but what made it feel right? Was it something your parents approved of? Was it the safest path after a failure? Was it repeated to you so many times that it became comfortable? And if you peeled back all those layers of influence, what would be left? Would you still make the same choice? This is where the paradox folds into itself. We feel responsible for decisions that were made long before we had any power. We feel guilt for things we were programmed to choose. We celebrate success as if we alone created it. But if the choice wasn't fully ours, is the outcome fully ours either? This doesn't mean you're a puppet. It means the strings are hidden, and the only way to cut them is to find them first. To pause in the moment of decision and ask, why do I want this? Where is this desire coming from? Am I choosing, or am I obeying a pattern I don't recognize? Because awareness creates space, and in that space, something miraculous can happen. Not a perfectly free will, perhaps, but a freer one. A version of you that acts not out of compulsion, but out of clarity. The choice may never be entirely yours, but the awareness of that fact, that's where your power begins. There's something deeply unsettling about a lie. It implies deception, falsehood, a distortion of reality. But what's even more disturbing is the idea that you could be living a lie and never know it. That your life, as you experience it, could be built on an unspoken fiction so familiar that it feels like truth. This is the paradox of the lie you don't know you're living. The quiet, creeping illusion that your identity, your beliefs, and even your values might not be real, but rehearsed. Let's begin with a question. How do you know who you are? Most people answer with roles or traits. I'm honest. I'm hardworking. I'm kind. But are those things truly who you are? Or are they the result of repetition, of survival, of what you had to be to receive love, safety, or approval? You were taught early on what was acceptable, what got smiles, what avoided punishment, what made people comfortable. So, over time, you adapted. You learned to present a version of yourself that worked, that got results, that earned affection. But here's the trick. After enough time, you stopped pretending. You started believing the performance was the real you, and that's when the lie became invisible. It's not malicious. It's not even conscious. It's just a quiet compromise that happens when the cost of being authentic is too high. When the pain of rejection teaches you that truth is dangerous. So you learn to smile when you're angry, to agree when you're confused, to say I'm fine when your soul is screaming, and slowly, the lie grows roots. You choose jobs that match your mask. You form relationships that reward the performance. You shape your entire life around a version of you that feels safe, acceptable, and fake. The most terrifying part, you forget it's a mask at all. You defend it, protect it, call it personality. But if you've ever had a moment in silence, late at night, staring at the ceiling, where something deep inside whispered, "This isn't me," then you've already met the truth. The lie we live isn't always loud. It doesn't shout or collapse under pressure. It survives because it feels normal. It survives because everyone around you is probably living one too. And here's the twist. Even your discomfort can become part of the lie. You convince yourself you're not happy because of external reasons, stress, lack of time, bad luck. But what if the real reason is deeper? What if your entire sense of self was crafted for someone else? So how do you wake up from a lie you don't know you're living? You start by listening to what makes you flinch. What ideas make you defensive? What truths do you avoid because they'd unravel everything? The lie hides in your reactions, in the roles you never questioned, in the voice that says, "You can't change now." But that voice is wrong. You can. Not all at once, not without fear. But the moment you acknowledge the possibility that you may not be who you thought you were, you begin the journey back to something real. And even if you don't yet know who that is, at least you'll know one thing. The mask isn't you. And the lie, no matter how comforting, was never worth the silence. You think you're in control. You decide when to move, what to say, how to respond. You believe your life is self-directed, your thoughts self-generated, your identity self-chosen. But what if there's something, or someone, you can't see, pulling strings behind the scenes? This is the paradox of the invisible puppet master. The eerie possibility that your decisions, your habits, and even your desires may be orchestrated not by you, but by unseen forces that operate just beneath your awareness. This puppet master doesn't look like a shadowy figure in a dark room. It doesn't need to. Its tools are subtle. Behavioral psychologists call it priming, the process by which exposure to a stimulus influences your response to a later one without your conscious awareness. A single word on a billboard, the scent of a store, the tone of a voice. Each can shift your perception, your memory, your action. You don't notice the manipulation. That's the trick. It bypasses logic and speaks directly to your unconscious mind. But the deeper truth is even more unsettling. The puppet master isn't external. It's internalized. It's your past. It's your trauma. It's your unmet needs, replaying patterns, like a script you didn't write, but feel compelled to follow. Have you ever found yourself in a toxic relationship? Again? Made the same mistake? Again? Reacted to a simple comment with anger, fear, or shame that didn't match the moment? That's the Puppetmaster, tugging on old strings, reactivating a part of you that was wired to survive, not to thrive. It's not trying to hurt you, it's trying to protect you with outdated strategies. It pulls you toward the familiar, even when the familiar is pain. Because to your nervous system, predictable pain feels safer than unpredictable freedom. And here's where the paradox becomes haunting. You feel like you're choosing, but the pattern chooses for you. Every time you rationalize the same behavior, tell the same story, feel the same shame, the Puppetmaster nods silently. You believe you're free because the cage is invisible, because the strings don't hurt when you're used to them. But ask yourself this: have you ever made a decision that felt entirely unlike your usual self? One that defied your patterns, your habits, your fears? That flicker of unpredictability, that uncomfortable, strange clarity, that's what freedom actually feels like. And it's terrifying, because it means letting go of the strings. It means no longer blaming the past, no longer hiding behind the mask of, "That's just how I am." It means stepping into choices that aren't rehearsed, reactions that aren't automatic. But once you notice the Puppetmaster, you change the game. You pause, you question. You hesitate in the middle of a pattern and say, "Wait, who decided this?" And in that tiny moment, the strings loosen. You'll feel them tug again. That's normal. But each time you resist, each time you act from awareness, rather than automation, you reclaim a thread. Not all at once, not perfectly. But thread by thread, the illusion of control becomes real control, and eventually, the Puppetmaster stops pulling. Because the moment you see the strings, you're no longer the puppet. Fear is supposed to protect you. It warns you of danger, keeps you safe, sharpens your instincts. But what happens when the fear you feel isn't actually yours? What if the terror that lives inside you was never meant for you to carry? This is the paradox of the fear that doesn't belong to you. The unnerving truth that some of your deepest anxieties, phobias, and self-doubt may be inherited, absorbed, or implanted. Not born from your experience, but passed down through others. Let's start with the science. Epigenetics has revealed something chilling. Fear can be transmitted through generations. In studies with mice, scientists exposed them to the scent of cherry blossoms while delivering a mild electric shock. Eventually, the mice developed a strong fear response to the smell alone. But here's the twist: their children, and even their grandchildren, displayed the same fear. Without ever experiencing the shock, the trauma lived on, quietly, biologically. Now imagine what that means for you. What unspoken terrors did your ancestors carry through war, loss, shame, and oppression? What unresolved panic was encoded into your nervous system before you were even born? Maybe your fear of abandonment isn't yours. Maybe your fear of failure didn't begin with you. Maybe the anxiety that spikes in harmless situations isn't weakness, it's memory. A memory not of events, but of emotions inherited like scars under the skin. And it doesn't end with biology. Fear is social. You can absorb it from your parents, your friends, your culture. You watch your mother flinch at confrontation, and you learn to stay quiet. You hear your father panic over money, and you begin to fear lack. You grow up hearing what not to say, what not to feel, what not to be, and those warnings sink deep. You internalize them. They become your compass, even if the direction leads nowhere. Here's where the paradox turns psychological. The fear that isn't yours still feels real. It still triggers your heartbeat, hijacks your breathing, floods your mind. It feels personal because your body doesn't know the origin. It only knows the signal, so you avoid opportunities. You silence your voice. You freeze when you should speak. And every time you obey the fear, you strengthen its grip. Not because it's logical, but because it's familiar. And what is familiar feels safe. But the haunting question remains: if this fear doesn't belong to you, why are you living your life by its rules? The answer isn't to kill fear. That's impossible. The answer is to examine it, to trace its roots, to hold it in your hand and ask, where did you come from? And sometimes, the answer won't be a memory. It will be a feeling, a pattern, a story you never questioned. That's when the work begins. To pause when the fear rises. To ask, is this mine? To choose, even in discomfort, to respond from the present instead of the past. Because when you realize the fear isn't yours, something strange happens. It doesn't vanish, but it loses power. You begin to see it as a visitor, a ghost, a program running on old code. And you begin to write a new script. Fear that isn't yours can live inside you, but it doesn't have to lead you. You hear a whisper, a simple sentence, a subtle nudge. Are you sure that happened the way you remember? Don't you feel like they don't like you? You probably won't sleep tonight. It sounds like nothing, just a passing comment. But hours later, your thoughts start to swirl, your heart races, and your reality seems different. This is the paradox of the suggestion that bends reality. The eerie phenomenon where a simple idea, planted gently, can alter what you feel, how you think, and what you believe to be real. Your mind is more malleable than you'd like to admit. It doesn't just process reality, it constructs it. And suggestion is one of the most powerful tools to influence that construction. Consider the placebo effect. A sugar pill, presented as medicine, can cause real changes in the body. Pain fades, anxiety decreases, symptoms improve. Why? Because belief reshapes biology. Suggestion becomes substance. But the reverse is true as well. The nocebo effect. Tell someone a harmless stimulus is dangerous, and they may feel pain, fear, nausea. Again, the body reacts not to the truth, but to the suggestion of truth. And it doesn't require a pill or a doctor. It can come from a parent, a friend, a stranger on the internet. A whispered doubt, a confident assertion, a sly question. Any of these can enter your mind like a seed and begin to grow roots. Here's the creepy part. Your brain doesn't always verify the source of the information. If a suggestion fits into your emotional framework, especially if it confirms a fear or insecurity, it's welcomed in, no questions asked. And once it's in, it doesn't sit quietly. It starts shaping perception. You walk into a room and feel judged, even if no one is looking at you. You avoid someone because someone else said they're untrustworthy. You feel anxious before bed because you read that blue light ruins sleep. These are not facts. They're suggestions that your brain has absorbed and now treats as reality. Now imagine how often this happens. A parent warns you you're too sensitive. A teacher calls you lazy. A partner tells you no one else would want you. These statements become lenses. You start seeing the world and yourself through them. You reinforce them with behavior. You build a life around avoiding their consequences. And all the while, You forget they were never truths. They were just suggestions. This is where the paradox tightens. The more convinced you are that your reality is objective, the more vulnerable you are to manipulation. Because suggestion works best when you don't know it's happening. Advertisers know this, politicians know this, hypnotists know this. A single phrase, repeated enough times, becomes truth. But here's the most haunting part. You do it to yourself. Your own self-talk, repeated over years, becomes internalized suggestion. I'm not good enough. I always ruin things. I'm never going to change. Each time you say it, you're not observing reality, you're shaping it, and you're trapping yourself in it. But there is a way out. Awareness. Start listening to the suggestions around you. Question where they came from. Ask yourself, do I know this is true, or did someone suggest it? And when the voice inside starts whispering fear or failure, pause, challenge it, replace it. Speak a new suggestion, one rooted in growth, not fear, because suggestion can imprison you, but it can also set you free. And in that quiet moment between the whisper and your belief, you hold the power to decide which version of reality you live in. You wake up, check your phone, scroll past a dozen headlines. You see a comment that irritates you. You open another app. A friend's photo sparks envy. A notification pings. It's an ad for something you spoke about yesterday. You laugh, shake your head, and move on. But slowly, without your permission, your mind is being rewritten. This is the paradox of the self that's being programmed. The unsettling reality that the person you believe yourself to be is being constantly edited, not by choice, but by exposure, repetition, and design. You think you are shaping your environment, but your environment is shaping you. Every second, with every click, view, scroll, and interaction. The algorithms don't just react to your behavior, they influence it. They feed you what keeps you hooked, even if it changes you in the process. This isn't just about technology, it's about identity. You think your opinions are stable, your preferences authentic, but what you see repeatedly becomes what you believe. Familiarity breeds not just comfort, it breeds truth. And when you're fed certain messages again and again about beauty, success, danger, belonging, you begin to absorb them. You stop questioning. And here's where it gets eerie. The programming isn't always direct. It's not just buy this or vote that. It's far subtler. It's in the emotion of a post, the tone of a voice, the values embedded in entertainment. It's in what's not shown, not said, not allowed to trend. All of it seeps in. You start measuring yourself against filtered perfection. You form opinions based on echo chambers. You develop reflexive reactions to people, ideas, and symbols without knowing where those reflexes came from. And when someone challenges you, you defend the program because it feels like you. That's the deepest layer of the trick. The programming works best when it hides inside your identity. You say, this is just who I am. But what if that self was curated by trends, by culture, by fear? What if you've become a product of suggestion, repetition, and design, shaped to consume, to react, to conform? Now ask yourself, when was the last time you had a thought that didn't come from a screen? When was the last time you formed a belief without first seeing a post, hearing an opinion, watching a video? If you're honest, the answer might unsettle you. But here's the paradox's hidden key. If you can be programmed, you can also be reprogrammed. The first step is noticing. noticing the pull to scroll, noticing the instant anger, the envy, the need for approval. Then you pause. You reclaim a moment of self-awareness. You ask, is this reaction mine, or did I inherit it? You create distance between stimulus and response. And in that distance, you find freedom. You are not the stream of content you consume. You are the awareness behind it. You are not the software. You are the coder, but only if you choose to wake up. Because if you don't, the programming continues, and the self you call me becomes just another product, crafted, sold, forgotten. You feel free. You move through your day, make choices, pursue goals. No one is holding you back. There are no visible chains, no locked doors. And yet, something weighs on you, a restlessness, a strange pressure, like you're living inside, boundaries you never agreed to, but never questioned. This is the paradox of the unnoticed cage, the disturbing realization that the most effective prison is the one you don't know you're in. A visible cage creates rebellion. It's obvious. It can be fought, but an invisible one, that's a different kind of trap. It doesn't need bars or guards. It uses beliefs, fears, and norms. It uses the illusion of freedom to ensure obedience. Ask yourself, how many things do you not do, not because you can't, but because you believe you shouldn't? How many desires have you silenced because they don't make sense? How many ideas have you rejected because they aren't realistic? Who decided what was realistic in the first place? That's the trick. The cage isn't around you, it's inside you. It's built from rules you absorbed without consent. Rules about what success looks like, what love should feel like, who you're allowed to be. You were handed a script early on. Study, work, earn, marry, behave, be nice. Don't ask too many questions. Don't stray too far. You didn't write it, but you memorized it. And now you perform it every day. The walls of the cage are built from things that sound reasonable. That's just how things are. Be realistic. Don't rock the boat. These phrases keep you tame. They convince you that coloring inside the lines is safety, when in truth, it's a slow suffocation. But here's the darker twist. If you try to leave the cage, the world will try to pull you back in, not with violence, but with doubt, with shame, with silence. Try quitting your job to pursue a dream, and watch how many people worry for your own good. Try expressing a truth that doesn't fit the mold, and see how quickly you're labeled difficult, crazy, or lost. The cage has defenders, and many of them live inside your own head, because the real paradox is this: we become the jailers of our own minds. We enforce the rules. We scold ourselves for dreaming too big, for feeling too deeply, for questioning too often, and we call that maturity. But it's not. It's fear, disguised as wisdom. So how do you escape a cage you can't see? You don't need to smash the walls. You need to notice them. You need to ask, where did this rule come from? Who benefits if I obey this limit? What would I do if I weren't afraid? These questions don't unlock the cage all at once, but they crack the illusion. And once you glimpse the bars, once you feel the tension between who you are and who you've been told to be, you can begin the quiet rebellion. You can start stepping beyond the script, because the door was never locked. You were just taught not to look for it. Desire feels like one of the most intimate parts of you. It sparks from within, moves you, motivates you, defines what you pursue. You want what you want. Simple, right? But what if the thing you crave, the dream you chase, the obsession you carry, was never truly yours? This is the paradox of the desire you never chose. the haunting possibility that what drives you might not come from your soul, but from programming, projection, and quiet manipulation. From childhood, you're surrounded by models of the good life. It's in the stories you're told, the characters you're taught to admire, the advertisements that blur into your vision. You see who gets celebrated, who gets love, who gets wealth, and your mind begins to draw conclusions. You don't even realize it's happening. The beautiful house, the perfect partner, the six-figure income, the applause, the followers, the legacy. These images begin to shape your inner map of what matters, and slowly, what you should want becomes what you do want. But here's the trick. The desire feels authentic. You think you're being true to yourself. You work harder, reach further, stay up later, fueled by a fire that may never have belonged to you. It's not just external forces that plant desires. Family plays a role. Parents may project their unfulfilled dreams onto you. Maybe your father wanted to be a doctor. Maybe your mother valued security above all else. And maybe, out of love, guilt, or fear, you internalize their hopes as your own. You say, I want to make them proud, but sometimes what you really mean is, I don't want to lose their love. And that's not desire, that's survival. The mind is crafty. It learns quickly how to disguise its fears as ambitions. And soon, you can't tell the difference between what excites you and what simply feels safe to want. But this illusion comes at a cost, because when you finally achieve the thing you thought you wanted, when you get the degree, the title, the lifestyle, you expect satisfaction. You expect the yearning to stop. And when it doesn't, you feel empty, confused, maybe even broken. But you're not broken. You're just awakening. Because the scariest moment in a person's life isn't failure. It's getting everything you asked for and realizing it doesn't satisfy you. That's when the paradox reveals itself. You didn't want the thing. You wanted the feeling you believed it would bring. Belonging, freedom, security, love. And maybe those things require a different path entirely. So how do you find the desires that are truly yours? Start by subtracting. Ask yourself, if no one applauded me for this, would I still want it? If it brought no money, no recognition, no approval, would I still chase it? When the answer is yes, you've touched something real. True desire isn't loud. It's not marketed. It's not urgent. It often shows up in quiet curiosity, in peace, in the feeling of coming home to something ancient inside you. And when you follow that kind of desire, the world may not cheer, but your soul will. So if something in you has always felt a little out of place, if your ambition feels like a mask or your dreams feel borrowed, it's not failure. It's your deeper self knocking, asking you to come back to the path you never gave yourself permission to follow. Every day, you perform tiny rituals. You reach for your phone without thinking. You scroll. You snack. You overwork. You procrastinate. You clean obsessively. You binge on distractions. You say yes when you mean no. At first glance, these habits seem harmless, even mundane. But look closer, and you'll see something far more troubling. This is the paradox of the habit that hides the wound. The quiet reality that many of your repeated behaviors aren't just habits. They're disguises. They are coping mechanisms, crafted not to serve you, but to shield you from something you don't want to feel. Every wound needs a cover, and the mind, being clever and adaptive, finds one. Maybe your wound is abandonment. Maybe it's rejection, shame, insecurity, grief. Whatever it is, it lingers beneath the surface, quietly bleeding. But rather than confront it, you build routines around it, And those routines begin to look like you. You become the helpful one, the one who's always available, always saying yes, but you're not doing it out of generosity. You're doing it to feel needed, so you won't be left behind. You become the perfectionist, the one who gets everything right. But it's not about excellence, it's about control. Because deep down, chaos terrifies you. You become the joker, always laughing, always deflecting. But it's not just humor, it's armor, a shield to keep people from seeing how afraid you are of being seen. These aren't just personality quirks, they're survival tactics. They work, at least for a while. They keep the wound hidden. They numb the sting. They help you function in a world that doesn't have time for vulnerability. But eventually, the disguise becomes a cage. You lose track of the original pain, yet still live as if it's happening. The habit remains, the wound remains, and you never heal because you've built your life around avoiding the one place where healing begins. Here's the paradox. The thing you do every day to feel safe may be the very thing preventing your freedom. Because habits don't just conceal wounds, they protect them from change. To break the pattern would mean confronting the pain, and pain is messy, unpredictable, terrifying. So you keep going. You reach for the phone again. You smile when you want to cry. You stay busy when what you need is to sit still. But somewhere inside, you feel it. The hollowness, the slow ache, the sense that something's off, even when everything seems fine. That's your signal. That's the moment to stop. To ask, what am I really avoiding? To notice what emotions bubble up when the habit is taken away, when the silence settles in, and there's nothing to distract you. It won't feel good, but it will feel honest. And honesty is the first step toward healing. Because the truth is, you don't need to fix the habit. You need to face the hurt underneath. Once the wound is seen, really seen, it begins to loosen its grip. And you begin to act not from protection, but from presence. You don't have to be ruled by the patterns anymore. You can choose something new, but only if you dare to ask, what's hiding beneath the thing I can't stop doing? Because the scariest thing about the habit isn't how hard it is to break. It's how long it's been keeping you from seeing who you really are. Comfort is seductive. It lulls you into a sense of safety, whispers promises of peace, and convinces you that stillness is the reward for surviving life's chaos. A warm bed, familiar routines, predictable outcomes. It feels like the very thing you've been working toward. But behind comfort's soft smile hides a silent threat. This is the paradox of the comfort that slowly kills you, the unsettling truth that what soothes you may also be what stifles you, and that the space where nothing hurts may also be the space where nothing grows. At first, comfort feels deserved. After hardship, after trauma, after long days, you reach for what eases the strain. And rightfully so. We all need rest. We all need peace. But comfort has a shadow. And when left unchecked, it becomes a cocoon so tight, it turns into a coffin. You stop taking risks. You stop saying the hard things. You avoid discomfort at all costs. And over time, discomfort becomes the enemy. Not pain, not danger, but anything unknown. This is how people disappear while still being alive. Not dramatically, not in one tragic moment, but inch by inch. One compromise at a time. One, maybe, later. One, it's fine until your dreams get quieter, your emotions dull, your thoughts shrink to fit the shape of your routine. And you call that peace, but it's not peace. It's a slow death. Comfort is often praised as a destination, but what if it's a trap? A beautiful one, a socially acceptable one, a trap that no one warns you about because most people are already caught in it. Look around. How many people do you know who stopped growing in their 20s? Who stopped questioning their beliefs? Who haven't changed their routine in years? Who gave up their edge the moment life gave them enough softness to sleep through their days? And worse, how many of them are still pretending they're happy? Brain is wired to avoid pain, yes, but it's also wired for challenge, for novelty, for purpose. Without those things, something inside you begins to die, not dramatically, but persistently. You get irritable, restless, numb. You crave things without knowing why. You chase stimulation, not to feel alive, but to feel anything. And here's where the paradox sharpens its edge. The more comfort you have, the more terrifying discomfort becomes. So you avoid it even more. And now you're not just stuck. You're afraid to even imagine freedom. So how do you escape? Not by declaring war on comfort, but by recognizing its limit. Comfort is meant to be a place to rest, not a place to hide. You need friction. You need challenge. You need moments that push you beyond the edge of ease, because that's where you find your aliveness. True peace isn't comfort. It's growth with purpose. It's knowing you can rest, but also rise. That you can be still, but not stagnant. So ask yourself, when was the last time I did something that scared me, but mattered? When was the last time I felt alive, not just content? If the answer doesn't come easily, your comfort may be turning into your cage. And if it is, there's still time to wake up, because your soul was never meant for sedation. It was meant for fire. You want to be liked. It's natural, human. The desire for acceptance is written deep into your biology, because in ancient times, rejection meant death. To be cast out was to be alone, and to be alone was to be unsafe. So you learned, without even realizing it, to adjust, to please, to mold yourself into what others might approve of. But here lies the trap. This is the paradox of the need to be liked that destroys who you are. The tragic truth that the more effort you put into being accepted, the further you drift from your authentic self. Until one day, the mask you wear is so convincing, you forget it's a mask at all. It starts subtly. You laugh at a joke you don't find funny. You say yes when your soul screams no. You change your tone, your opinions, your appearance. You shapeshift, hoping that if you're agreeable enough, they'll like you, they'll keep you, they won't leave. And often, it works. You get the approval. You avoid the conflict. You feel safe for a while, but deep down, a quiet voice begins to stir. It asks, who am I performing for? What happens if I stop? Would they still like me if I were truly myself? That voice is your truth, and it's been suffocating under layers of compromise. Because the need to be liked doesn't just influence your behavior, it edits your identity. You start becoming the version of yourself you think others want to see. And slowly, your real self goes quiet, afraid, hidden. And here's the horrifying twist. Most people will never know the difference. They'll like the version of you they've been shown. They'll praise you for traits that aren't even real. They'll say, you're so easygoing, while you silently scream inside. And the longer it goes on, the more exhausting it becomes. You start to feel hollow, disconnected. You're surrounded by people, but somehow lonelier than ever, because no one knows you. They only know the persona you crafted to earn their affection. That isn't connection, it's performance. And yet, you keep doing it. Because the risk of rejection feels unbearable. Because somewhere along the line, you were taught that being liked is safer than being real. But here's the paradox's secret. Being liked is a shallow substitute for being loved. Being liked requires maintenance. Being loved requires truth. Being liked means fitting in. Being loved means standing out and being accepted anyway. So what would it cost you to be disliked? To say what you mean? To hold a boundary? To be too much for someone who prefers you small? It would hurt, yes, but it would also free you, because the people who are meant for you, the ones who truly resonate with your soul, don't need you to be palatable. They need you to be whole. And they can't find you if you're always hiding behind who you think you're supposed to be. So the next time you feel that pressure to shrink, to soften, to agree, pause. Ask yourself, am I being liked right now, or am I being erased? You were not born to be everyone's favorite. You were born to be real, and real is what the world needs most. There's a moment in your past, maybe one, maybe many. Something happened that overwhelmed your capacity to cope. You were hurt, rejected, betrayed, abandoned. And your nervous system did what it had to do. It adapted. It created rules, reactions, and defenses that helped you survive. That's the miracle of trauma. It protects. But that protection has a price. This is the paradox of the trauma that keeps you safe by keeping you stuck. The haunting truth that the very patterns built to shield you are the same ones that now prevent you from living fully. Trauma isn't just about the event. It's about the meaning your body attaches to it. When something painful happens, especially early in life, your mind scrambles to make sense of it. You draw conclusions like, I'm not safe. I can't trust people. Love is dangerous. I must stay small. Those beliefs become internal laws. And your body starts responding accordingly. You flinch when someone gets too close. You sabotage when things start going well. You procrastinate on dreams that feel too big. You stay in the familiar, even when it hurts, not because you're broken, but because somewhere deep inside, you've equated expansion with danger. Here's where it gets twisted. The trauma is no longer happening, but your body acts like it is. Every trigger, every hesitation, every panic response is your system trying to protect you from a wound that has already passed. And the worst part, the protection works. You avoid the pain, you stay safe, but you also stay stuck. The opportunity doesn't get taken. The relationship never deepens. The potential remains dormant. And slowly, the walls you built to protect yourself become your prison. You might even start to identify with them. I just don't do vulnerability. I'm too anxious for that. I've always been like this. But no, you haven't always been like this. You became this, as a response, as a shield. And the more you rehearse the pattern, the more real it feels. You mistake the defense for your personality, the wound for your identity. But here's the paradox's key. Trauma teaches you how to survive. Healing teaches you how to live. And healing doesn't mean erasing the past. It means recognizing when the alarm bells are ringing in the absence of fire. It means honoring the parts of you that protected you, while gently telling them it's okay to rest now. This isn't easy. Trauma responses are deeply ingrained. They're physical, emotional, unconscious. but they are not permanent. They are learned. And what is learned can be unlearned. So the next time you feel that shutdown, that hesitation, that urge to run, pause. Ask, what am I afraid will happen? Is this fear from now or from then? What would I do if I believed I was safe? You may tremble, you may falter, but each time you choose presence over protection, you loosen the trauma's grip. You begin to move, to risk, to live, because safety isn't the absence of pain, it's the presence of choice. And when your past no longer dictates your present, you finally begin to write about your future. There's something you know, deep down, in a quiet part of you that doesn't speak often. It's not a thought, it's a knowing, a truth that lingers just beneath the surface. You carry it with you. You feel it in moments of silence, and yet you don't say it. This is the paradox of the truth. You're terrified to say out loud the heavy reality that the most authentic parts of ourselves are often the ones we silence the most, not because they're wrong, but because they're real, too real. And real is terrifying, because truth has consequences. To speak your truth means risking judgment, rejection, disappointment. It means pulling off the mask you've worn for years. It means revealing the version of you that doesn't play by the script. So you don't say it. You smile instead. You nod. You pretend you're okay with things you aren't. You stay in relationships that no longer nourish you. You pursue goals that no longer excite you. You tell yourself, it's fine. This is just life. But the body remembers what the voice refuses to speak. You feel the weight in your chest, the tightness in your throat, the fatigue that can't be explained by lack of sleep. These are the symptoms of suppressed truth. They're the body's way of whispering, there's something you're not saying. Maybe the truth is small. I don't want to go. Maybe it's bigger. I'm not in love anymore. Or deeper, I don't believe in this version of myself. And sometimes the truth is so vast, it scares even you. I have no idea who I am. We fear speaking these truths because we believe they will unravel everything. And they might. But maybe what they unravel is not your life, but your illusion. The version of life that was never really yours to begin with. The truth is inconvenient. It rarely fits into other people's expectations. It rarely aligns with the timeline or the plan, but it's yours. And what's yours cannot be substituted. Here's where the paradox cuts deepest. The longer you suppress your truth to keep the peace, the more internal war you create. You preserve the comfort of others by sacrificing your own integrity, and what you gain is approval. But what you lose is yourself. Because truth doesn't vanish when ignored. It mutates. It becomes resentment, anxiety, depression, numbness. It finds other ways to speak when your mouth stays closed. But here's the strange redemption. The moment you say it, out loud, even just to yourself, there's a shift. It's not clean. It's not easy. But it's freeing. Even if nothing changes right away. Even if no one understands. Even if your voice trembles. Because speaking your truth isn't about being heard. It's about hearing yourself. It's about choosing self-respect over self-erasure. And yes, the truth can break things, but maybe they were already broken. Maybe the only thing keeping them standing was your silence. So ask yourself, what am I afraid to say? And what would happen if I said it anyway? You may lose people. You may disappoint them. You may walk into the unknown. But what you gain is you, and that is worth everything. You plan, you prepare, you make lists, set goals, double check, organize, and anticipate. You try to stay ahead of failure, of loss, of chaos, because deep down, there's a belief. If I can control it, I can survive it. You cling to structure, to certainty, to the illusion that if you just try hard enough, nothing can fall apart. This is the paradox of the final illusion of control. The haunting truth that the more you try to control life, the more life slips through your hands. Control feels like safety. It gives you the sense that you're steering the ship. But life isn't a machine. It's a storm, unpredictable, unapologetic. And the more tightly you grip the wheel, the more exhausted you become, trying to steer what was never yours to command. You try to control outcomes, relationships, other people's opinions, your image, your timeline, your success, even your emotions. You say, "I'm fine." You hide the breakdown. You mask the confusion. You force peace where there's pain. But control doesn't equal peace. It equals pressure, and the cost, connection, spontaneity, joy, all sacrificed at the altar of keeping it together. But here's the cruel irony. The very things you're trying to control, your future, your relationships, your sense of identity, are the things most beyond your reach. You can't control who loves you. You can't control what tomorrow brings. You can't even fully control what your own mind will think or feel next, and yet you try. Why? Because surrender feels like death, because to let go feels like falling, because if you stop holding on, what happens next? But maybe that's the point. Maybe the falling is where life actually begins, because control isn't stability, it's resistance, and resistance keeps you trapped in fear. The final illusion is that letting go means losing everything, but letting go is what allows everything real to begin. When you stop trying to force outcomes, you begin to experience them. When you stop editing who you are, the right people finally find you. When you stop rehearsing every word, truth finally speaks through you. This doesn't mean you abandon responsibility or stop caring. It means you stop pretending you're in charge of things that were never yours to hold. And once you do, something incredible happens. You breathe deeper, you see clearer, you feel lighter, because control was never power. Presence is, and presence only comes when the illusion shatters. So ask yourself, what am I still trying to control? What would happen if I didn't? You may feel fear, but right behind that fear is freedom. The kind of freedom that can't be planned, only lived. Some paradoxes don't scream, they whisper. They sit quietly beneath your habits, your fears, your daily routines, asking questions you're afraid to answer. Not because you don't want the truth, but because you already sense it. Deep down, in that quiet place untouched by noise, you felt the tension, the unease, the knowing. Throughout this journey, we've wandered through strange territory, where comfort kills, where the mind watches itself, where the truths we fear to speak echo louder than words. But in each paradox, there was a thread, a single question tying them all together. What if the life you're living isn't the one you truly chose? The answer isn't simple, but maybe it's not supposed to be. Maybe real change doesn't begin with certainty, but with curiosity, with the courage to pause, reflect, and unlearn. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are a mystery still unfolding, both the question and the answer. And every time you listen a little deeper, question a little louder, or act a little truer, you come home to yourself. Not the self shaped by fear or approval, but the one that's been quietly waiting beneath the noise, behind the mask, ready to be remembered. Now, the real journey begins.